Welcome everyone. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. Hi everyone. Before we get started, just like to remind you all that on the bottom of your screen you see a little block that says Q&A. Feel free to type in your questions as we go, or if you wish to hold them till the end, we will take them then as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in 1 minute so the stragglers can still catch the whole session. Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started. Thank you for joining us promptly. As I said, on the bottom of the screen that you're viewing, you should see a Q&A section. Just kind of click that button and type in questions as they come up, and we'll attempt to answer them either at the end or as we go. Also, we'll answer any questions when we're all through. So anyway, welcome. Welcome to the third Z-Wave Alliance Virtual Academies Webinar Wednesdays. I'm Mitchell Klein, Executive Director of the Z-Wave Alliance, and we'll be coming to you every Wednesday. Got a great agenda, whole wide variety of quality content and presenters. For example, next week, on June 17th, we'll be presenting the Z-Wave 700 series, Getting Started, and that will be presented by none other than Dr. Z-Wave himself, Eric Ryard from Silicon Labs. Week after that is June 24th, where we'll be delivering strategies for successful smart home product design and manufacturing, which will be a really engaging session presented by Leaderson. If there are other sessions you'd like to see or you'd like to participate in, please do let us know. We're always taking suggestions. But meanwhile, when he's not chasing his 5- and 3-year-olds down the street, teaching them to ride a bike, Colin Depree is the residential business leader for Salto. He's tasked with guiding Salto's strategy and growth in the smart home and property tech space. Colin brings over 10 years of industry experience and a multitude of operational responsibilities, including sales leadership, customer experience, and software support. Carries a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from Albion College and a Master of Science in Management Information Systems from Florida State University. And he also has a minor in bourbon tasting. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Colin Depree.
Good afternoon, good morning. I'm sure our attendees are from all over, but Mitch, thank you for the introduction, and excited to talk about the trends and where the residential smart lock market is today. As Mitch mentioned, feel free to add questions and comments throughout, but with that, we're gonna jump right into where does Salto fit into this space and where do we see this space going? So I think the key piece, kind of where we want to get started is at our core, we at Salto believe in replacing mechanical keys. And that is where our concept stems from and what we've always believed in, but we've primarily been focused in that commercial space for a long time. About 3 years ago, we identified the residential space as our next move and where we needed to go. That provided a great opportunity to expand on that mechanical key replacement. And when we started to look into the residential space, we believed our best avenue to do that was through acquisition. And so in 2017, we made an initial investment into a company called Danalock. From there, we've grown and expanded our relationship with Danalock, leading up to January of this year, where we wholly acquired Danalock and brought the residential smart lock into the Salto family. And while we had originally moved into this space, seeing it as an opportunity to expand that mechanical key replacement, we recognized right away that this was also going to be a transition for what residential meant and what is the residential market. And so what I want to talk about today is really how that concept of the residential market is transitioning, and we have to open and expand our thoughts on what the residential market is for smart locks today. It really has become a platform. It really has become an ecosystem and is really starting to transition away from the concept of security and a security hub or a security system being the primary integration point for a residential smart deadbolt and the smart home, right? And so by expanding and opening up what the residential market is, we really start to expand our markets. And so one of the big trends that we're seeing is the smart deadbolt is no longer just applicable to the smart home and the smart security system. We're really starting to see that vertical market expand into hospitality, right? So hospitality is no longer just traditional hoteling. You're seeing the short-term rentals, the vacation rentals, the individual homeowners renting out their space. So that transitions from a pure security piece to that user experience piece. In healthcare, you're starting to see a lot of transition into that home healthcare, the hospices, people trying to stay in their residence as long as possible. In the multifamily space, you're starting to see the demand for the smart apartment and the smart building really expand, and it's not so focused on security as it is on user experience. In the residential space, you're obviously still seeing that increased use and that increased demand for smart access within the smart home. That certainly isn't going away, but I think when you go and transition your mindset on what is residential and really begin to expand on that, a lot more use cases and a lot more opportunities open up in some of these different vertical markets for the smart deadbolts, right? And for smart locks. And I'll get to that later, where it's really starting to expand off of smart deadbolt too, into smart lock. But for what I really want to talk about here is this transition away from the security focus and how it's really driving to the user experience, right? And if we don't open our minds and our ideas and our products and our integrations to residential on a greater scale, we're really limiting ourselves to some really valuable opportunities. And why that transition is taking place really falls into 4 categories in our opinion, right? The first one is that smart access. No longer is it just about a single door, right? When we were in the smart home and smart locks were really just coming into the market, a lot of things were based on that security system in a single family home. Primarily, we needed to control one door, that front door. It had an ANSI deadbolt on it. We brought it in with the Z-Wave connection to the security system hub, and we were good to go. But now we're really starting to see multiple doors need to be controlled in this ecosystem and on this platform. So how do we deliver smart access to multiple doors and really expand into that platform space? So it's not just about securing that one door, it's about easily allowing myself, others, my family members into more doors and more space. So we have to make sure that when we're thinking of the smart lock, it's not just limited to that one door. It's about multiple doors, more of a complex feel, especially when you get into that multifamily space. You may have common area doors, use cases like that. And then in that vacation rental space, you're starting to see the demand of getting into the unit that you've rented, but also maybe into the pool gate. And so that concept of smart access is no longer about one door. It's about the user experience through getting through multiple doors. And then increasing that complexity is the idea of management, right? When the smart lock first came to market, it was really about the individual user. So it was my house. I was in full control. I was the one issuing keys to the dog walker, to the workers that were coming in to, remodel the bathroom, whatever it was. It was kind of a single point of control. But as you look at these new markets that we're moving into, and that we're seeing the smart lock move into, it's not necessarily about an individual control. Now management is involved. So there's operations teams, there's the home healthcare world, let's use that for an example. The owner of that house, the person who needs the care, isn't necessarily going to be the person issuing the credential to the nurse or to the medical professional who is going to come and offer that support. It's going to be the home healthcare business or the hospice manager or whoever that is. So how do we dynamically allow the homeowner and the patient to be secure, to understand who has access to their building or to their home, while allowing the hospice provider or the healthcare provider to actually issue mobile credentials to the various nurses, the various medical professionals that are going to service in that unit. So there's this new dynamic, this new level of control and management where it's not about that individual. And so we have to make sure that we are developing products and integrations and platforms that enable that multi-dimensional control of the lock beyond just an individual user, and allowing people to maintain control of it, manage their operations efficiently. If you move into the vacation rental space away from the hospice, they've got this same dilemma of maybe you have multiple properties. How do you manage those multiple properties, manage multiple guests, different users, different time frames? So that the lock and the control of that lock is no longer just about a single individual. And that's something we really have to keep in mind as this residential concept starts to change and transition. And while the concept of security may be transitioning to the bigger user experience, there's no doubt that security and safety is still critically important to the lock, right? We're allowing access into our place. So it's not that security and safety are going away, it's just becoming a part of the bigger picture, right? So we still have to make sure that we're maintaining that safety and that security of access. Those profiles now become critical. As I mentioned in the previous slide there, you now have owners, you have users, you have managers, you have all of these different profiles and types of access. And are we aware of all of those different pieces when we're building the platform, when we're building the operation and the tools that people are going to use? We have to make sure that we're thinking about those different profiles, and it's not just a single owner, right? So we have to be able to be flexible in who has access, when they have access, how we give them access, all based on what that use case scenario is, to ensure that we are providing the level of security that is required for access into these units, into these homes, into these protected spaces. The other piece that is really, really critical and it would be amiss not to talk about is the data that these access points now provide, right? And data is a really hot topic right now, right? Because on one hand, you want to make sure that you protect data, that the data privacy is met, that we're aware of these access points are truly data at every level. We're not just granting access. We are now also collecting data in use case and all of that. And so making sure that we're crystal clear on data privacy and protecting data, but also identifying opportunities to use data effectively and safely for future build outs, for future development, for future growth. If you look at multifamily spaces and vacation rentals and things of that nature, the data that our locks and that smart locks can provide in those cases are critical to growth. How do we build our next building? When I'm going to buy my next vacation property, what are the things that the tenants and the users and the guests are doing in those places? That's incredibly valuable data that we want to provide, but we also have to make sure that we're balancing that data usage with that data privacy. So as this is expanding to these new markets, the data and how we use it and what it provides becomes that much more critical, because in the vacation space, it may be about data usage for that next building and that next growth. But if you're talking about the home healthcare piece and using it in hospice, well, now there may be a whole new dilemma there as it relates to HIPAA standards and things of that nature. So as we expand this market and we expand these use cases, we have to be cognizant and thinking about what data do we need to protect, how do we need to protect it, but also how can we use it, how can we leverage it, because we are gathering very, very critically important data for other use cases with each one of these access points. And then the connected living piece, right? The core of what the smart home was, that's still there, right? The resident service in multifamily, the guest service, the guest experience in vacation rentals, using our lock as the trigger to a number of those connected living things. You know, do we still have the capability to use the entry point as the notification, the turn on for lights, the adjust the thermostat control? All of those things are still there. Again, just maybe in different use cases, right? And so being aware of where the lock fits into that ecosystem, the expansion of that ecosystem, and making sure that as we're developing the product, as we're developing the firmware, as we're developing the software, as we're developing the integrations, we're not just limited to kind of that traditional smart home security-based application. We're really starting to think about those bigger use cases and that transition of what does residential really need to mean in the market today. So beyond the ecosystem transition and the flexibility and the need to understand that residential is expanding from a platform standpoint, we're also starting to see a demand for flexibility as it comes to hardware on the front doors of these homes, of these apartments, of these vacation rentals. You know, the traditional, I don't know if you can see my video screen piece, but you know, the traditional ANSI deadbolt in the US with the 3/4 inch deadbolt, quarter turn, that's long been the traditional primary lock on a front door. The lock can control it with a very simple motor turn. It's been a fairly general standard for a long time, but we're starting to see the movement towards a more robust locking solution, whether it's a European mortise lock, whether it's a multi-point lock, whatever it is. You're starting to see residential homes expand beyond a more traditional ANSI deadbolt. And that is requiring our lock design, our locking mechanisms, the motorized functionality, the ability to control those different locks is forcing the smart lock market to be more flexible, be more dynamic on what locks and what cylinder profiles and what the torque required to move multiple locking points versus just that single deadbolt is also becoming one of the really big trends that we're seeing, especially in the high-end home market, right? That's where we're seeing the most movement, but I would say it's starting to expand beyond that. And that's one of the big keys behind our Danalock product is that flexibility to work on US ANSI, European cylinders, multi-point locks. Because we are a retrofit lock, we bring that universal capability to the market. So when we've kind of assessed some of these transitions that I just talked about, in these two big trends of expansion in the residential market, flexibility with the hardware that's on these doors, some of the things that we have really focused on with our Danalock product is that universal capabilities, right? We want to be invisible really when it comes to the different locks. So we have the capability to go on Scandinavian mortise. We have the ability to go on European mortise. We have the ability to go on an ANSI deadbolt. And we're constantly evolving to make our design as modular as possible so we can accept different cylinders. We can work with different hardware providers, and we can provide that access on these different levels of front doors, apartment doors, that sort of stuff, while providing that same level of demand on the ecosystem, on the platform, on the flexibility of use case to meet also with that hardware demand. We've chosen to go with a retrofit, more of the retrofit, just the inside half of the door, allowing for simple install, simple retrofit, ease of use for both property management companies, security providers, traditional dealers, new age vacation rental providers. We believe that we have that simplistic feel. Obviously, the demand is there for the keyless and the mobile credential. So that's a critical infrastructure part of our lock. And then making sure that we can connect to the smart home, whatever that smart home is, whether it is a traditional security panel or a more of a generic Samsung SmartThings hub, where it's much more about the end user experience and the use case within a home and that sort of a thing. To do that, we really have a lineup of 4 products. We have the Danalock itself, which is our V3. It's our 3rd generation smart lock. As I mentioned, it comes in kind of 3 different form factors for hardware: Scandinavian, European mortise, and US ANSI deadbolt. All of them are built on the same base product, but with different mounting credentials and things, or mounting equipment and things like that. We have chosen to go with a non-connected pin pad. Provides flexibility to not require the pin pad, yet it's there if you need it, if you want it. It's a BLE connection between the pin pad and the V3 lock itself. Provides a lot of flexibility. You can, in a residential space, you can hide it on the side of your house behind a pillar. It doesn't have to go on the front of your door. We find that a lot of people want that nice higher end hardware on the front of their door, but yet they want pin pad capability. So by making this not a part of the lock and making it BLE connected, we give that flexibility to keep the nice, crisp, clean look of hardware while still providing pin pad functionality where necessary. We also have the universal module as part of our platform. What we really think this brings compared to our competitors is that flexibility in a lot of the multifamily spaces, the vacation rental spaces, anywhere where we are controlling something other than a traditional door, garage door control, gate control, door strike control. So where you're starting to see us expand this residential market, we needed a product that provided the ability to control other doors than a traditional lock set, while still creating that ecosystem platform, still leveraging the Z-Wave protocol to allow the platform to make the decision to open various doors, gates, things of that nature. And then we do have a Dana bridge, where if you're not leveraging a platform, not leveraging the Z-Wave protocol to talk to a hub of some sort, the Dana bridge allows our lock to communicate BLE to our bridge. Bridge goes Wi-Fi to our cloud, allows you to have some of that same control remotely if you're using it more of a standalone solution. Okay. With that, kind of where I'll end is with our Z-Wave integrations. It's opened up all kinds of platforms, the alarm.com security platform, Samsung SmartThings platform. We have the capability to be dynamic for both that ecosystem side of things as well as the hardware. And I think those are the two big pieces that I wanted to speak on today that we're seeing, is that transition from the smart lock being a part of a security ecosystem to being a part of a much bigger user experience ecosystem. And then also the demand for the smart lock to be flexible and dynamic when it comes to the hardware that we are applying the smart lock to. So those are the two big trends that we're seeing. At this point, I've got my contact information up here. I'm more than happy to take some of this stuff offline, go into other directions. But I'll bring Mitch back here and we can open it up for a bit of a Q&A session.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Very insightful. Appreciate that. And we do have a question from Gerardo. It says here, if I understand you correctly, Salto now owns Danalock. Who's the right point of contact in Canada to talk about integration of Danalock actuators and high-end GU multi-point locks?
Yes, so that is correct, Gerardo. Salto does own Danalock. As your first point of contact, that would be me. So I lead the residential business group for North America, so US and Canada. I would be your first point of contact. We can talk through the demands, what you're looking to do. And then as we get kind of project specific and things of that nature, we would bring in our regional sales managers from wherever you're located in Canada or in the US market.
Excellent, thank you for that. Another question here, is there a distance, well there obviously is, what is, in your experience, the distance limitation in terms of trying to remotely locate the Dana pad?
Yeah, so because the Dana pad to the Dana lock is a BLE communication, we are limited on that BLE range. So we typically recommend 7 to 10 meters. So you're in that 30-foot range. Obviously, if you're outside that, probably and you don't have a garage in the way and things of that nature, with open air, you can get further than that. But we still recommend 7 to 10 meters for that Dana pad to the lock distance. Yeah,
actually, I think that's a really cool application of that keypad, to actually not put it on the door.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Renee. Do you see Danalock as an important lock for smart rent?
Yeah, absolutely I do. Absolutely I do. Smart Rent is doing a lot of really, really cool things in the MDU space. The platform that they provide is doing a lot of what we're talking about, right? It's that user experience for both the rental users, but also the property managers, and blending that all of these different use cases and unique demands that are coming. And I think the Danalock provides an opportunity to bring that control, that data to residential doors in the multifamily space at a price point that's effective, right? You may not get some of the functionality that some of Salto's other more commercially focused locks bring, but we still bring that primary goal of being that trigger point for entrance. We provide that access, that smart access, and so I do see Danalock as a potentially very important part of that smart rent ecosystem.
We have another question from Manny. Is this integrated for Salto SVN? I mean, I'm not personally familiar with it, but apparently Manny is. Is this application able to be used for MDU, like, multifamily properties with Salto SVN common area access control?
So unfortunately today, no. That is on the roadmap for when we acquired Danalock. We believe that this lock format, right, this hardware format of our Danalock is critically important to bring into the bigger family of products that we have, and bringing it into the SVN space world. But today, this hardware is not compatible with our space product, our SVN solution.
I think we have time for one more question. So let me ask this. You've been talking about, the growth opportunities for smart door lock. Where do you see the biggest growth opportunity in all of the different verticals that you mentioned earlier on in the presentation?
I would answer that in two ways. I think obviously from a quantity standpoint, in a pure numbers game, it's obviously in the multifamily space. There's so many units that are still using brass keys today. But I also know that that's a really busy space. And a lot of people recognize the growth potential, and there's a lot of folks in that space. I think from a current market standpoint, that home healthcare in hospice space is really a market that a really solid solution is needed. And so while there may not be the number of doors, there's also not there's not as much competition in that space from what I've seen.
I can also see that as a very important growing category as well, Colin.
Yeah.
I think the opportunities, there's a lot of doors out there, I guess is the bottom line, right?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
Anyway, so listen, I want to thank Colin for this presentation today. You can see on the slide how to reach out to Colin directly. Obviously, we encourage you to do so. You can also reach us at our Z-Wave Alliance email. You can go to zwavealliance.org and reach out to us. Colin, thanks very much for the presentation. And for all you folks for joining us. And for next week, remember, we've got the how you start working with Z-Wave 700, which should be a very insightful presentation. So thanks again, everyone, and hope to see you again soon at our next presentation.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mitch.